Well, let's get some reaction now to this morning's GDP figures on the state of the UK economy. I'm joined here by the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, John Glen. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And I just wonder if, very quickly, because we just saw that report there from Rob Powell, who was trying to find Nadine Dorries in her constituency yesterday. What's your view on Nadine Dorries? Do you think she should step down immediately?
Well, I'm a bit bemused. She said that she was going to resign immediately. She hasn't done so. And I understand the frustration of her constituents. If they can't get access to her, then they're going to be very disappointed in that. She needs to get on with it, and she needs to make that decision real by announcing her resignation formally.
OK, let's move on to GDP figures. Just out at 7 o'clock this morning, in the last few minutes, they show that in the second quarter of this year, that's between April and June, the economy grew by 0.2%. Basically, more evidence that the economy's flatlining. Is that disappointing?
Well, I think what it shows is there's a lot of resilience in the UK economy. We saw a record upgrade from the IMF of 0.7% higher for the UK economy this year. That's welcome news. When I started in office 9.5 months ago, recession was predicted. But of course, I would like that figure to be higher. But we're in the middle of the pack with respect to our peers in the G7. Germany is actually flat. Italy is minus 0.3. So, we've got a lot of work to do, but we're also in the context of the inflationary pressures we see in the economy at the moment. It's obviously a delicate balancing act because we want to deal with that inflation, which is a massive impact for business confidence and for households, as we know. And obviously it's very difficult to achieve higher levels of growth when you're dealing with inflationary pressures.
And yet the Prime Minister has promised to do just that. He's promised to grow the economy by the end of the year. I mean, is he going to achieve that at this rate? And are you going to be stringing up the bunting if you get growth levels of these measly amounts of 0.2%, for example?
Well, we had the highest growth last year in the G7, and we're predicted in 2025 to get back up to that level. But you wouldn't expect me to commentate on the outcome of something that will take all year. We're at half-time, and as we start the second half...
the IMF's forecast.
Well, the IMF forecast is a record. We've never seen a reforecast of up 0.7%. So what I'm saying is that the predictions at the end of last year about the resilience in the UK economy have proved not to be the case. We are proving to be more resilient, but of course, as I say, with those inflationary pressures, it is extremely difficult to secure the levels of long-term growth immediately that we wish to see.
Well, yes. So what do you think is behind this lack of growth, this stagnation? Is it down to rising interest rates, or is there something more fundamental going on?
Well, the strikes played a significant part. Obviously, the public sector is 20% of our GDP. We had quite a lot of strikes in June, cancelled operations. That has a big impact. We also had an additional bank holiday in May for the coronation. That has another effect. But we are in line with our peers across Europe, and that is the fact is that 90% of economies, the IMF says this year, will see a reduction in anticipated growth levels. These are global factors that are impacting us. What's happened with COVID, what's happened with Ukraine, has an impact on how economies function.
So what's the plan? What's the government going to do about it to boost growth?
Well, we made a number of announcements in the budget to get more people into the workforce, so 100,000 more people over the next few years. We've got free childcare. We've been very careful in the way that we've executed the way that we're spending public money not to stoke inflation. All of those things give people confidence, and there's some positive figures there today about business confidence. But these are delicate times for the economy, and we're watching and monitoring it very carefully.
Well, yes, and the Chancellor's talked about breaking out of the low growth trap. No real details on that as yet, but...
Well, no, there's a lot of details. He made a speech in February where he set out his priorities across the 5 growth industries.
OK, but he said there was more details to come, didn't he?
Yeah, of course.
Statement. So give us a sense of where his priorities might lie. I mean... Is he looking more to corporation tax than personal taxes, for example? Well,
everything's got to be affordable. We've got record levels of borrowing to pay for the interventions that we've made to support families through the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, and through COVID. That's got to be paid for. But what he's set out is a resilient, robust view of the UK economy, the 5 growth industries that we see as being key to long-term growth. And in the autumn statement, we'll bring forward measures to make sure that process continues and we see a return to levels of growth that we anticipate and expect in the UK economy.
Would you rather see corporation taxes looked at rather than personal taxes as a priority?
Well, we will look at things in the round according to what we can afford. But at the moment, I think people want us to get our public services back to where they need to be and deal with some of the challenges with waiting lists. We've made a significant progress with waiting lists over 18 months, and we'll see more of that in the coming weeks.
I wonder if I can just get your thoughts on the junior doctor strikes. They are taking action again today.
Yeah.
This is the first of 4 days of walkouts.
Yes.
The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, has called on doctors to end their strikes. He said they're harming patients. Are junior doctors harming patients?
Well, I think if you have 105 or 6,000 operations having to be rescheduled that we saw over the last bout of strikes, it has an impact. People feel it, and it's not good for the economy, it's not good for patients. Now, we as a government have to be responsible in the pay settlements that we give, and we listen to the independent pay review body. And that means giving junior doctors in their first year over 10% increase. On average, junior doctors will have just under 9% increase in the amount of money that they're having. And that's in a situation where we've got to manage inflation. So we've also tried to address other wider concerns around pensions in the medical sector. The BMA wanted us to remove the lifetime allowance. We did that. And we'll continue to be open to talk to them about working conditions. But what we can't move on is additional pay, given that we've listened to their independent pay review body.
But isn't the only way to end the walkouts to talk about pay? Why won't the Health Secretary engage with the unions on this?
Because we've listened to the pay review body. We've given them a formula which gives, as I say, over 10% to first-year junior doctors, on average 8.8%. We've got to have an eye to inflation and the inflationary impact of giving those additional sums. But we continue to be open to talk to doctors about the ways of working, and the Secretary of State, Steve Barclay, has always been clear on that.
But, as you say, they want to talk about pay. And at the moment, you say that the strikes are impacting patients. So isn't the only way to end these strikes that are impacting patients to talk?
A 35% pay increase, which is what they're asking for, is completely unrealistic, would be sending completely the wrong signal to the economy and to the wider public at a time when, obviously, inflationary pressures are the top priority of the government. Inflation undermines the value of money, the value of savings for everyone, and there's no way that we can sustain that level. We have front-loaded that pay settlement to those junior doctors in their first year, and we're giving an average pay rise of nearly 9%. That is a significant pay rise, and we urge the doctors to stop the strikes and start serving the patients.
So in the absence of talks, are you prepared to see doctors striking through the winter then?
Well, I'm very unhappy with their decisions to strike, but it will be their decision. I urge them to reflect on the overall situation in the economy and the fact that patients need them to conduct their operations. We've been fair. We've listened not to what we've said, what their own independent pay review body suggested, and we've agreed with that. We agreed with it across all public services, and indeed unions have decided to not to strike any further.
We talked about the Prime Minister's pledge to increase growth in the economy, which is proving challenging. How worried are you about his pledge to cut waiting lists if these strikes continue?
Well, we've made significant progress on the 18-month waiting lists, and we've also done other things like transfer responsibility to pharmacies. We've got over 100 new diagnostic centres up and running. We've got an increase of 16% in the amount of tests that we're doing. So we're making a range of interventions across the health system. But obviously it is more challenging when doctors are striking. But we will work with the NHS to make interventions that deal with the backlogs that exist.
I wonder if I can just get a quick thought from you before you go about Teresa Villiers and the news that's emerged today that she owned £70,000 worth of shares in Shell when she was Environment Secretary. That wasn't declared for 5 years. What do you make of that?
Well, I think she's apologised. She's admitted their mistake. I think part of the situation is there's an MP regime for disclosures of private assets and there's a ministerial regime. As I understand it, she didn't fulfil the obligations of the MP regime while she was a minister. But as I say, she's been very clear in apologising. It was an oversight on her part, and she will correct it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
OK. John Glen, thanks very much indeed for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.